Hello, everybody. This is Bill, Sitrep 6, and I'm coming to you with a new series of videos about playing big battles in small spaces, or better known as How Do I Play with Microscale. So today is the intro, and we'll talk a little bit about what you'll see in the upcoming videos. But first, I want to give a shout out to our next prize winner, Paul B. You were the random comment picked on the podcast video from last Saturday. So we'll be sending you one of these lovely mugs. If I can get it so it doesn't fade away on me. And a matching t-shirt. So congratulations. I'll send a request to you out here shortly. So moving back on to where we're here. So why am I doing this? Well, I sold our palatial home. They had all that hobby space, and we decided to pick up and move to the Florida Keys to live in the life of the tropics. And down here, space is a limited premium. And if you can find your big house, it's going to cost you several $1,000,000 and just not conducive to where we are at this point in time. So we are living in a park model RV home, if you will. And the space that I will have to hobby with, I'll show you right now. That's it. It's a little table that's probably, 2 feet by 3.5 feet ish. So obviously, we can't do big 20 millimeter games here. We could do 28 millimeter games if we went into the living room. Let's see if I can show you a picture of it as I scroll through all this. So right there's the living room. So this space here, we could probably put a table in when we need to, but that's about all we have for hobby space. So I decided that we are going to use micro scale. So there are several micro scales to use, but before we can decide which scale or size we're going with, we had to determine what rule set we are going to be exploring. So the rule set I chose is Fistful of Toes, 3rd edition. This was just recently released. So it does, and I'm going to switch to a better camera here. There we go. It does cover mechanical warfare from 1915 to 2015, and they actually are working on a more modern or ultra-modern war set as well. So I decided to go with this as a challenge because I'm not familiar with this rule set whatsoever, outside of a quick glance here or there. So as we decide, you can see as I get to it, let me see, get through the introduction here. It's a very nice, well-rounded rule book at this point. So I don't know if you can see this. Let me see if I can bring that up so you can see it. Let me go to a different screen here, folks. And then there we go. And now, because you don't need to see my big old face. All right. So Fistful of Toes, 3rd edition, is designed for 1/285th or 1/300th, or more commonly known as 6 millimeter scale, what they call micro. But the rules can be adapted, obviously, to any scale. I am very curious about playing it at 6 mil. However, I have always been a fan of the 1 to 600 scale, or commonly referred to as 3 millimeter. So, because that's going to give me the most bang for my buck when it comes to the type of models I can put on a table in the small space I have. So we are going to probably, more than likely, do this in 3 millimeter. So let's take a quick look at some rules. This here, they're talking about, the models you can get. Obviously, GHQ makes good quality miniatures in 6 millimeter. And the nice thing about micro scales is that they're pretty affordable to build big armies. So, but obviously, if you have more room, you can play it at 15 mil and so on. But your ranges are going to be more realistic when you're at those smaller scales. So here's a size comparison of the different ranges. So here's your 6 mil is right in this range here. Obviously, 15 N scale, that's a railroad scale, and 10 mil. So I've had miniatures in all these scales. If you remember from a video we did about a year ago, I printed tanks in 10 millimeter to do with Battle Group North Hack. So this is just a listing of different scale miniature providers. We are going to be looking at this one in particular, Pico Armor, because I've had their miniatures before, and that is probably where I'm going to go. So this first video is just an introduction into the next video, which will be looking at designing our armies and then ordering them up. So today we're looking at the actual rule book, and then we are going to go to different little sections in the rule book and get a quick look, and then we'll jump over to Pico's site and look at it there. Make sure you comment, like, subscribe this video if you're interested in anything that's microscale, and it doesn't have to be modern. If you have a different era that you would be interested in seeing us play, I'm going to be your small scale, microscale expert tour guide, whatever you want to say, and we'll go from there. So let us take a look here. So again, you have all these different miniatures, how to paint them. Nice thing about microscale is you can throw a little bit of paint, a little bit of wash if you want, and bada bing, bada boom, you're good to go. Then the other thing is that why I like the 3 mil scale is because I can put a whole squad or a platoon of vehicles on a small base. So, because while I understand that miniatures are a visual representation of a unit, company, battalion, brigade, division, whatever you have. I am more of the visual. I want to see a stand, in this case a 30 mil, and that stand represents an entire squadron or troop of tanks. So like 5 tanks, and we can look at some on those as well. Terrain, there's different options for terrain. I also have I'm looking over at my boss, the head boss, the boss, and she's waving, Dawn's waving, and of how we're going to create terrain that we can throw on a table but can be stored easily. My goal is to get a couple of those Rubbermaid storage containers. They're like, I don't know, 3x4-ish, that will hold everything in it. Terrain, models, the whole kit and caboodle. So we will see. So there's options here that talk about cheap terrain, but we're going to, I also like to have my battles look visually appealing. So we will look at that as well. But again, it has to be able to be used well. So then they talk about different websites you can go to. There's a Fistful of Toes website right there, www.ft3.com. And then they actually have, I don't know if this is still in use, it's a Yahoo group. I'm not going to click on it yet because I don't want to lose my pages I already have up, but there is that in it. Again, you can buy this rule book from Wargamers Vault. I think it was like $39 or something like that. And I thought it's very well put together. So let us look. So they, playing your first game, they tell you just how to use the basic rules. There's a primer that you can get when you download it, and some other items there. Infantry tactics. They say infantry is the hardest thing to play in this rule set because you have to do them properly. Now remember, in proper modern warfare, you have to have infantry to have mechanized or armor. You can't have armor without infantry, and you really shouldn't have infantry without mechanized armor. They go hand in hand. Okay. So keep going through that, and let me do a quick jump over here. Let's see where we're going to go. So they talk about the book itself and rules. So I'm not going to get into a whole bunch of stuff on the rules per se. Here it basically says what you need to play. You need 6-sided dice. I use 6-sided dice. I know Jim prefers 10-sided dice. But in this rules, they use 6-sided dice, tape measure, paper, pen, pencils, the typical kit for wargaming. The standard scale is 1 inch equals 100 meters. So for larger battles, well, I can use centimeters instead of inches. I've never been one to use the metric system, but I can tell you when it comes to playing war games, metric is easier than inches in a lot of instances, because you don't have to, it's 3 3/4 of an inch or 3 3/16 of an inch, whatever the case may be. So similarly for early periods, you can adjust your scales. Okay. One vehicle represents 4 to 6 vehicles, occasionally 3. A stand can represent a platoon. If you like, you can play, this is my favorite thing here, is you can play Fistful of Toad 3rd edition at the 1-to-1 scale with very few modifications. And they have a whole chapter dedicated to playing 1-to-1 because, like I said, I want to see my minis represent one vehicle is one vehicle. So each turn is about 12 minutes. You can do a variable turn sequence if you wish, and requires distances, movement points, halves, do not round results. Measuring, there's no pre-measuring, which is nice. I've never been a fan of pre-measuring. So if you declare your fire, then you measure, not before. So, I think that's pretty awesome. There's some optional rules that you can get in here as well. And then the sequence play. It's a you go, I go game. Attack, player reinforcements, airstrikes, area fire, moves, direct fire. Defender does the same thing. And then you go on from there. And there's the command phase, the area fire phase, Overwatch, movement, and then close combat, and then Overwatch last phase, and then fire phase, final phase, and defending player. So time limits, optional but highly recommended. 1 minute to place artillery barrages, and 5 minutes to conduct movement. Obviously in the beginning you're not going to do time limits, so don't look at that. And then as you get on, when you actually get better in it, you will definitely do that. And then you have markers, which they include a download sheet you can do, and you might be able to actually order tokens somewhere, or some self-enterprising person with a laser burner, Chris, could make us tokens, right? We know somebody who has a laser. Okay, so basing troops. Again, it goes through all the stuff you need to do to play this game. And then they have the data charts. So, and then army lists. So at the back of the book, they talk about all the militaries of the world that's appropriate for this time of play. So they talk about quality checks, which is based upon the training or quality of your troops. And what are the effects if you make it or don't make it. So let us get to, and of course there's cohesion. Everybody has to have cohesion. So they talk about martial troops have 2, fair troops have 4, average troops have 4, good troops are 6. The better you are, the better longer distances of cohesion you can do. So they cover all that good stuff. So let me go to, I'm going to pop this in here right quick and talk about artillery, laser guided, chemical agents. They actually get into NBC type combat, nuclear, biological, chemical. So here's your nerve agents. Anybody who's been in the military since the 60s, you all go through NBC training at some level, and it's never fun because you pretty much know if there's a nuclear attack, you're toast. Let's be truthful. So, even if you go through mop gear, all that stuff, pretty much. So again, you can play with nuclear weapons in Fistful of Toes 3rd edition. That is interesting. I don't see us going to that level, but I could see Jim at the division and a greater level considering tactical nuclear weapons. So, I don't know. If you guys think that's something we should look into, because I don't know how many people have actually played with nuclear weapons in their games. I think Jim in World War 2.5 had nuclear weapons released when we were in Ireland during the Team Yankee boot camp, I believe. So there's rules that covers all the NBC, nuclear, biological, chemical. They talk about different rockets, the Davy Crockett. The Davy Crockett, I don't think that's even that's so old. That's definitely not in use anymore. That was from, way back when, 50s and 60s. So, yeah. And then they talk about scenario design and campaigns. So you can come up there. So obviously one of the more popular scenarios that comes up in modern, we're talking 80s. Well, anything 60s on up is the folding gap. Now, there's other people who say there's different areas outside of the folding gap that were probably more likely for conflict in Europe. So, but it doesn't have to be Europe. It could be Asia. It could be Africa. It could be, Southeast Asia, the Pacific, somewhere. So you're not stuck with just having to play in Europe if you don't wish to. There's a point system, based on terrain density and stuff. So, it guides you through all that. So it's a nice thing. Open terrain favors a longer range weapon. So obviously, based upon the battlefield, is how you're going to pick your your military, your armies, and then you go from there. So I know I'm skimming through these pretty quickly. I'm just trying to highlight things for you. They got a battle generator campaign where you can, work in your own creative scenarios, and then how to do objectives and victory points, and then go from there. So really the first part of this is going to be a deeper look at the rule book, as far as we're going to do a little exploration of, this is what a tank can do. How does it battle out? So just a quick review. And then we're going to pick our military, and then we'll do some painting up of them once we get them in, and then we'll go from there, and then we'll do some playthroughs. So gaming at the 1-to-1 scale, my preference. So the scale is 1 stand equals 1 vehicle or 1 infantry squad. Organized stands in platoons and companies and artillery batteries. So it tells you how to do that. And that was one whole page. It's one chapter. But, it's pretty simple. And then we get into the designer and developer notes. They talk about how they got around and how they did this and how they did that. So it's interesting reading if you choose to do so. They talk about their vehicles and all the data. So that was pretty much the rules, which ended with chapter 26, which was 175, 173, 175. So after page 175, you go through their notes on designs and how this works and how they develop this. So they determine their armors. So if you're interested in how they come up with their ratings and statistics for the units within the game, they explain and walk you through it, which is very interesting if you're one of those people that really gets into stuff. I'm assuming Jim would really be interested in how they came about that, because I know he creates his own. So it'd be interesting to see his take on this. So we'll skip through that. And then I am going to get to, I talk about, weapons and, how to make it realistic and all that good stuff like that. We can break that down if you're more interested. Again, this is a quick overview and introduction into micro scale, playing big battles in small spaces. And you can see they really go into a lot of detail. They go into the weeds about, ammunition ratings and all that good stuff. High explosive ammo. Then they start talking about gun charts. So here's all your gun charts, and this is pre-1950. So you can see flamethrowers, 7.62 machine guns, anti-aircraft machine guns, So those are generics, and then they start breaking down by country. So you see France and Germany, and which they probably have 88s there, which they do right there. So in World War II, Germany used a lot of 88s, and then they really did their homework on weapons and equipment. So now they're talking post 1950 weapons. So they get up into the modern calibers and weapons. So we're talking 105s, 107, 120s, and then they break it down based on the country, how that ballistic characteristics were. Like the 120, there's the UK version. So right there, and then they have the L44s, and so they really went and did their homework. So it's really in depth on that. So it'll be interesting to see how that actually plays in game format. So they go all the way to rockets, and then now we're talking about weapons charts, anti-tank, high explosive, armor piercing, and you can see they have Argentina. So if you're looking to do some Falklands Islands, Argentina is right there. Belgium, China. So if you want to do some Chinese type weapons, Czech, Egypt, Finland, France. As you can see, it goes on and on. They have a little bit of everything. Israel, Italy, Poland. Russia obviously has a lot of anti-tank weapons, RPGs. South Africa, Spain, Sweden, Switzerland, the UK, and then the US. And as you can see, the US had quite a bit. You're talking dragons and mavericks. A maverick is, an aircraft guided. You have TOWs, obviously, Hellfires, longbow Hellfires. Those come off of, obviously, longbow model Apaches. And then you have your Army list. So we're at page 223, and we're just starting the actual Army lists. And they talk about how they're defined in each category. So here we go. British from 1939 to 1945. They pretty much show you the quality of the troops at that time, from each era of the World War II and the post-war. And then they break down what a regiment was. So 3 infantry tank companies is 4 infantry tanks, 12 infantry tanks, standard inventory. So they break it down for you so you can really decide and go in here, okay, I want to have a British Armored Regiment from North Africa. And it tells you what was in that during that time. So if you want to be very historically accurate, you have everything right here. Like, example, a British Infantry Battalion from 1943 to 45. These guys have been now fighting for, 4 years by 1943. War started in 1939. So they're pretty experienced by this time. So it really goes into, you got your Universal Carriers and REC teams, or Recce teams, Bren carriers. We know somebody who owns a Bren carrier, John, our friend in Ireland. His dad and him restore World War II vehicles. So then you talk about any type of mix of military unit from that time period is broken down, and it shows you how everything was done, which is pretty awesome. So when I go to build my military, the armies, I have all that right here. Like, I have British parachute battalions from 42 to 43. Obviously, they were more prevalent in 44 and on. So, if I want to do like Arnhem or D-Day, you have those right there. So then you have your British air landing battalions. Those are glider troops, commandos, and so on. So everything you can think of, I'm assuming not everything, but it's pretty in depth. They get in the French army. The German army, obviously, is going to be pretty extensive. As you can see, the army list. So, they talk about a heavy Tiger battalion from 44 to 45. I got 3 Panzer 5s, Tigers, and 1s or 3 Panzer Tiger or 6s, B model Tiger 2s. So it breaks it down for you. Panzer Grenadiers. So all of that is right here for you. Polish Army, I mean, give it to the Polish Army. They took on tanks with cavalry, guys on horses with swords. So the Soviet Army obviously is going to be a pretty extensive list. And this, like I said, this goes on and on and on. As you can see, we're talking post 1950 here. Or is this the pre? This is just the easy reference list. So you got your rate of fires, ranges, all that good stuff is here. So, it tells you the period, what years, all that good stuff. So extensive lists to be had for all you guys who are very interested in all that. And then it's still artillery from 50. I mean, we haven't cracked 1950 yet. So they break modern into up to 1950, and then post 1950 is what they consider modern warfare or post World War II. Because before 1950, a lot of people were still using World War II equipment for the most part. Aircraft, they break down aircraft for you. So if you know your aircraft, Stukas and Focke-Wulfs and Messerschmitts 109s and all that good stuff, it's all right there. United Kingdom, you got the Typhoons, Hurricanes, and Spitfires. And then, of course, you have the U.S., who had quite an extensive list of aircraft as well. From P-51s, you have 4 Corsairs in the Pacific. You had A-36s, you had P-47 Thunderbolts, P-40 Air Cobras. P-40 is a Curtiss Warhawk. P-39 is the Air Cobra. So all those there. And then we get to the post-1950. This is where we get into, quote-unquote, the modern. And you can see Australian Army comes into this. Because I think they did a lot of Australia bound in with the UK, at the time for World War II. So it talks about, if you want to do something like in Vietnam, you could do Vietnam right here. So everything is there because, and you could do the what ifs. So, and I know Jim just did a what if. It was the Marines versus the Australian Army in a Sunday playthrough. So it's all right there. So there you go, guys. You can see the Canadian Army for our friends up in the Great White North, Chris. And the Danish Army, and Dutch and Egyptians. So you can do the Desert Wars of the 60s and early 70s, the Arab-Israeli Wars, and then French Army, and etc., etc., etc. All right, so we're going to jump over to, let me get the right page here, and go to Pico Armor. So we're going to finish out this first video. I know it's kind of a little dry and stuff. This is mostly informational, but we wanted to make sure that you get this and you understand that this is what it's all about, is right here. Pico Armor or some format, whoever's your preferred supplier, but this is 3 mil. I'm heavily leaning towards 3 mil. I know 6 mil is a little more visually appealing, a little more detail, but you'd be very surprised on what you see in this scale. Right. So here is a picture. I don't think I can blow it up. Let me see if I can. Not much, but you can see some, looks like LTVs right there. There's 4 LTVs on a little base. I think that's a 1 inch by 1 inch base. So let us take a look at what they have to offer. So as you can see, they have Civil War, Cold War, and 15 mil, but and then they have moderns and Napoleonics in 3 mil. So I might even do some Napoleonics in 3 mil at some point in American Civil War. But let's look at some modern miniatures in 3 mil, and they have an pretty extensive collection. So let's take a quick look at a mortar crew. So it's a Soviet mortar crew. And you can see they've got their trucks and the actual miniatures, and this is 3 mil. So, and it's $475 for 7 pieces, or yeah. So that's pretty cool. Includes 7 mortars, 7 trucks, and 1 infantry stand for $4, 4 and 3/4. So that's pretty cool. So, all right, let's move back to other miniatures in the modern. So you can see some more self-mechanized artillery. So you can get 15 of these little tanks for $4.75. You've got more self-propelled artillery here, different versions. Exactly. So there's all these different ones. So let's look at some Americans here real quick. So our buddy, one of our mascot here at the Sitrep podcast, it is the A10 Warthog. So as you can see, let me see if I can enlarge it there for you. So there's the A10. So you can get these to play in your game. So the next video will be really designing and ordering our miniatures. So I'm looking forward to it. Guys, make sure you comment below. These are their 15 mil. They really don't have anything. It's mostly just little miniatures. Infantry. So, yeah. So if you go into here, let's look at a couple British real quick. You got some Abbotts, some Saxons, some Bedford trucks, Buccaneer. So that's an older aircraft. Obviously, Centurions, some Challengers. Challenger 1 Mark IIs, and Challenger 2. So they look a little, at this scale, when, you're looking at them this close, it's going to look a little off in detail and stuff. However, you got to remember that when you're playing, it's 2 feet away or so from you, and it's going to look really cool on the table. So, and, for $4.75, you can buy these Challengers, and it helps if I click on the right screen. And you get, I'm not sure how many come in this pack because it doesn't say, but you usually get several. I mean, you can probably get a whole squad in a pack. So 15 pieces, 15 Centurions for $4.75, 15 Challengers, so 15 Mark I's, so on and so on. So Chieftains and all that. So, all right, guys. Well, that's going to wrap up for this first video. We want to thank you for following along. I appreciate it. Please follow along with us, and they'll get more exciting as we go on. This is just the intro into how you can create big battles in small spaces using microscale. So make sure you follow along, like, and subscribe. Make sure you get your merch. We have new mugs out. And if I can get that to stop doing that goofy camera thing. And we have t-shirts that have the same logo on the back and have our traditional A10 logo on the front. You can get those at your link here. It's at the Sitrep Podcast Supply Room on Teespring. So if you go to Teespring and just put in Sitrep Podcast, you can go right to it. Help support the channel. They're really nice. Just got mine in today. Got my t-shirt on and my mug. And the rest of the team will be getting theirs here soon. So, and then Paul, remember, you'll be getting a set as well. So until we see you guys again, this is Bill for Sitrep Podcast. I want to thank you and have a great night. Take care.